All right, everyone, welcome to this special Friday session. So we are taking here at Fastcase, we have taken over the docket alarm session for this Friday lunchtime hour. And today we're going to be talking about legal developments and how to track and research those developments around the COVID-19 pandemic. So before I get ahead of myself, my name is Ken. You may recognize my voice from our Wednesday Lunch and Learn sessions. And I am your reference attorney based in the West Coast, who is today here with Damien Riehl, who is our very special guest, the director of Fastcase. So Damien, in his federal litigator coat, is going to be walking us through the presentation today. But before we dive into the substance, we all know that before we can explore a house, we must first clean the house. So let's talk about a little bit of housekeeping. So while I promise that you will learn a lot during this webinar, it is not approved for CLE credit. However, if you need any free CLE credit, please check out our rotating library of sessions offered every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find this library of CLE webinars located at www.fastcase.com/webinars. Once more, that is www.fastcase.com/webinars. Now, the other piece of housekeeping is please place your questions that you're thinking of as they come into your mind during the session in the questions box. We will cover as many of those questions at the end of the session. If we do not get to your question, or if you are like myself and you think of that burning question after the webinar is over, please email me at support@fastcase.com and I will get you all the answers you seek in as expeditious a process as possible. Otherwise, we are now going to turn it over to Mr. Riehl, who is going to start our presentation on staying alert with COVID-19 legal developments. So, Mr. Damien, take it away.
Great, thanks, Ken and Aaron. Really happy to be here with everyone. And I give a lot of talks, and the first question for any attendee is, why should I care about what the speaker is talking about? So a bit about me. I'm a lawyer since 2002. I worked for courts before I went to law school. I did a couple of clerkships for state and federal courts, worked in litigation for almost 15 years. So I did small law from 2000 to 2002, and then big law for about 10 years, where I represented large corporations on both coasts and in Texas. Jumped from there to work for Thomson Reuters in legal tech. From there, I went to cybersecurity, including a long engagement with Facebook and investigating Cambridge Analytica. And since July of last year, I've been with Fastcase. So all of that's to say that Fastcase is by far the most fun job I've ever had in my life. So I'm really thrilled to be talking to you today. The topic today, as Ken mentioned, is COVID-19 legal issues. And this is something that, of course, is not taught in law schools, nor is it even taught in many CLEs before March. So this is a fast-breaking topic, much like technology is a fast-breaking topic. Everyone needs to be able to keep up on what's happening largely by the minute. So what we're going to be talking about today is the things you see on your screen are just a sampling of the types of issues that have come up post-COVID that will probably continue to evolve over the next 12 to 18 months until the pandemic is safely behind us, if that happens anytime soon. So what you see on your screen is largely civilly based. I was a civil litigator, even though I did a lot of criminal law when I clerked for the state and federal courts. I'm not going to go through each of these because largely I can imagine that our attendees are, a broad spectrum of civil litigators, criminal litigators, as well as in-house folks, as well as people that provide advice, as well as M&A folks. So really the focus of this webinar is less on particular legal developments. I'm not talking about contract law and what's been affected. I could speak a whole hour on contact breach, but that wouldn't be very interesting to the criminal lawyer. So really the focus, instead of digging in deep on any particular area that you see on your screen, there's largely I'm going to be talking through the process where you yourself can be able to most effectively find the particular issues that you're looking for, and to be able to quickly find the legal research you need, and then provide that information to your clients. A way that Ken and Aaron had said recently, Docket Alarm since March has been providing weekly presentations on Docket Alarm and its ability to provide literally up to the minute results on this fast developing topic. Michael Sander, our Docket Alarm founder and now Fastcase employee, has shown, COVID-19 or coronavirus is you do a query, and currently there are over 200,000 results in his 300 million plus data set. So that's a lot of data, especially in just happening over the last few months. Also, if you have a Docket Alarm subscription, you can see that there's a COVID-19 section here. So you can find all the documents in the last 30 days, new complaints and pleadings, which would be helpful whether you're a plaintiff in a COVID-19 case or whether you're a defendant in the COVID-19 case. Essentially, this is your document management system for solo small folks or medium-sized folks or even large big law folks that don't have as much experience in the COVID-19 area. When I worked for Big Law, my first go-to location was our document management system to see, has there been a complaint on this issue before, or has there been a pleading on this issue before? If I were litigating today, I would just get Docket Alarm right now and just be able to say, okay, it's one thing for my own law firm to be able to have example complaints. It's a much better thing to be able to get an example complaint from across every law firm, some of the best litigators in the country. So at any rate, so the COVID-19 is a really important part of Docket Alarm and the dockets. In addition to that, Fastcase, of course, has a lot of resources. Fastcase is put together, if you are a Fastcase subscriber, which I presume you are, if you're on this, right in the homepage, you can see that there's a COVID-19 related information. If you go to the initial homepage, that will take you to our COVID-19 page. So I'm gonna actually pull up a live version of that page here. This is provides many pages of links to some of the fastest breaking information on COVID-19, including the federal, both legislative acts and federal laws, as well as the regulatory acts and other regulatory rules on coronavirus. It provides those same Docket Alarm items, and you can be able to find these whether or not you subscribe to Docket Alarm. These are free to be able to browse. And then also has feature cases for any particular week that are going through. So if you want to keep on top of the most recent developments, both on Docket Alarm side, on the federal regulatory side, and you can see here cases. We have some highlighted cases that are important for any particular week. Those are there too. And then we also push you to a lot of other, of course, our Fastcase webinars like you're on now. Littler Mendelsohn has lots of resources, ABA does, immigration, etc. So you can see that these are a wealth of information where you can get up-to-date legal research for everything that's happening today. That is our Fastcase COVID-19. So beyond Docket Alarm and beyond the COVID-19 page, dedicated page that you saw, there are also, of course, the Fastcase Legal Research Platform, of which I'm the managing director. My job for the Fastcase Legal Research Platform is to not only ensure that your today's experience is the best that it can be, but that tomorrow's experience for you will be even better. And so where Fastcase will be in the next 1 to 2 to 5 to 10 years is largely in my hands. So my job is to take customer feedback and take my experience over 10 to 15 years of litigation and be able to not just be as good as the duopoly, one of which I used to work for, but also actually make it better and exceed some of the capabilities that have been there before. So stay tuned on some really cool things that are happening on the Fastcase platform. We'll be talking about Fastcase today as it exists. I'm gonna actually jump to the legal research platform itself. Of course, if you're looking for COVID-19 research, the best thing to do is to search for the term COVID-19 and then or coronavirus. And then because I have searched for this before, something that not a lot of people recognize is this little thing here. It has both my recent searches as well as my saved searches. So if I do COVID-19 or COVID or coronavirus, I can say, okay, I want to apply that, and that actually provides that into my screen now. So I'm going to search, and that is going to be able to go through our entire data set. And if you haven't looked on Fastcase in a little while, we have over the past few months really improved this left-hand side. So you can see from this particular query, I can quickly see how many cases relate to COVID-19 or COVID or coronavirus. I can see cases, statutes, rules, acts. You can see that, exactly where there are results without actually having to run separate searches for each of those. So that's helpful in and of itself. But then beyond that, I can be able to, we have something that not a lot of people use, but I think more people should, is if I say New York in this filter, then it filters not just for anything that has the word New York, but also jurisdictions that relate to New York. For example, the Second Circuit. New York is in the Second Circuit. So I'm able to see for COVID-19, all the New York cases that are in the, 2 in the Second Circuit, 52 in the Eastern District, et cetera. So at a glance, I can quickly see for my jurisdiction what's been happening over the last days, weeks, and months. So that filtering, and then if I want to get rid of the filter, of course, I could just do the X and go back to this. So I'm going to try California and Calif, not Carlif, Calif. Carly? All right. California, of course, you can find Ninth Circuit, et cetera. So if I want to find any particular, say I'm in the Central District, or I want to see developments in the Central District, I would just click on this. If I want to, that selects both the Central District and the Bankruptcy Court. If I just want to do one of those, I can go like this. So as you can see that I'm able to quickly find the things that I need, not just in the case side, but in the regulations. If I decide that I want to find all the Ninth Circuit and all the federal courts, so Eastern, Northern, Southern, and then California State Court cases, whether it's Supreme Court, Appellate Court, or Superior Court, now you can see it collects all of those in the top left-hand side. One of the things that is relatively new that you can do now that I have these particular jurisdictions that I care about, I can save them. So now that is saved to my sources. So now I can find these here and here, and as well as here to be able to find my saved scope and my saved sources. So of course, if you want to be able to find any of these, go more deeply into any of the documents, you can see that it's easily highlighted the terms. If I want to be able to jump to the terms, I can jump to the terms by clicking on them here. If I want to get rid of a term, I can do that this way. Any questions thus far? Kevin, or I mean, Ken, any questions from the audience?
No, so far everyone is just following you attentively along. So
excellent, good.
Please continue.
So it might be one thing to say, okay, what is all of the 223 documents that are in the California related courts today? But what if I just checked last week? Of course, you can also say, okay, I want to be able to find in the past X number of days, weeks, months. So if I want to say from 5/1 of 2020, 5/1, come on, 5/1, 2020, I can do that. And then it gives me just the cases that have been in the last few weeks. Of course, then I can also sort by date to be able to find the most recent case from May 28th, just yesterday, that are in that jurisdiction that have coronavirus and COVID-19. Of course, that date modifier is up here as well. So if I want to then clear the date, I can just click on the trash icon to be able to eliminate that date filter, and then I go back to my 223. Another important part of Fastcase that we're improving all the time is our suggested terms. And what that does is able to find particular terms that are commonly found with this search query. So which terms are most frequently included in documents that have COVID-19 or COVID or coronavirus? And this gives you shows that the most common term that is related to COVID or COVID-19 or coronavirus is prejudice. So if I'm looking for ways to be able to explore a legal topic, but I don't really know what I'm looking for, I can say plus on this prejudice, and you can see that that adds prejudice to my query. So now I can say prejudice and COVID-19 or coronavirus, and then that'll provide additional documents that relate to prejudice as well. Prejudice. If I want to add, sometimes there are items that I don't necessarily query for. For example, if I want to find conspiracy, I can do conspiracy, and then it will highlight conspiracy on the right-hand side. And the way that we've set this up and developed it is conspiracy now will stay in my highlight, for the documents, regardless of, even though it's not in my query. So that way, conspiracy, sometimes I don't want to limit my cases to just those that mention conspiracy, but conspiracy is kind of an important part of what I'm doing. So this kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It'll still be highlighted on the right-hand side without excluding things that don't include it on the left-hand side. If I say, I don't care about pro se, I can add if I want to be able to add things, but I can also omit. So if I say, I don't care about pro se, therefore I want to exclude anything that has pro se, you can see that that adds not pro se to my query on the right-hand side. All right, so we've talked about limiting scope in a smart way to be able to find particular jurisdictions that matter. We've talked about limiting date range to be able to say, I last researched this a week ago, just give me the last week or so. And then we've also talked about suggested terms. What do I include or not include with the elements that are in my current query? Now, if I have exhausted my search, and I've gone through these 59 documents, and now I've been reasonably satisfied that I have found all the cases that relate to the thing that I've been looking for. You can see this little bell right next to the history, the saved search keyword. If I click on the bell, that creates an alert. So now that I've finished my session for today, now that I've hit the alerts button, every morning I will receive the new cases that just come out with this query in these sources. So I just clicked on, there we are, with these sources. So within the California jurisdictions that I searched for, everything that satisfies this query will be delivered to you in your inbox. So that's the whole, the name of this webinar, of course, is Staying Alert. And so this idea of staying alert and being able to find up-to-date case law for your particular topic in your particular jurisdictions is something that is, we think, pretty powerful. So if we go to, here we have case law alerts, you can see all of my alerts that I've had thus far. And so you can see that, both the alerts and the jurisdictions in which they are located right there. All right. Let's do an example for return to work, which is something that is common for employment law, at least. How can you safely return to work as your employees return to work? And so this is, for example, I have from May 1st to yesterday. Here are all the cases that relate to return to work. So with suggested terms, you can see that the most common terms that go around with this are good faith and certification. And is there a constitutional right that is violated if, for example, my employer asks me as an employee what my health results are? Is there a constitutional right to say no? Is there a constitutional right to my health privacy and not having to tell my employer? All of these things are good suggested terms to be able to further explore the legal issues and to be able to find aspects of the law that you hadn't necessarily thought of before you started your research session.
All right, Damien, we have a question from someone in our audience, if you have a moment to answer it. So the person is asking if they have applied a suggested term or they have otherwise created a search they're not satisfied with, can they alter the search without having to go back to the main page and rerun it?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, but please, it would make me sad if you had to go back to the main page and rerun your search. You can see just like Google has their search bar up here where you can add and change your queries, you can also change the queries here. So if I decide that I don't want return to work anymore, I can just get rid of that and then just hit search or enter, both of which will get my results back. So yes, please don't go back to Fastcase the results where then you have to rerun your query. Or if you do that, go back to your recent searches to be able to do this. But much easier than what I just did is just changing up here the particular query that you have to make it even better. All right, and I love those kinds of questions. I've been developing software since 1985, since I was 10 years old. So I know that there's a common refrain in user interface design that the user is not like me. The user is not like me. So I love questions like that because it reminds me that lots of folks something that they struggle with things, and so that's I like hearing that this is to give them easier ways to be able to do things rather than the harder ways that they may be used to doing them. Another idea that is common that this is running the query is the idea of a medical condition of coronavirus. So for supervised release, for example, is there in the criminal side, are there cases where a criminal defendant who is maybe somebody who is actually serving time in prison, should they have early supervised release because of a medical condition? Because perhaps the prison population is a riskier place for that person with a medical condition to be than if they were on supervised release, where it would be potentially safer for that person with a medical condition. So that's an example of particular queries that you can build for say a particular criminal aspect. As I mentioned earlier, any one of these headings at the top you can sort. By default, right away, you can see sort by relevance. So the 100% relevance goes to the top, and then it goes to 99, 98, etc. But if you want to be able to find the most recent cases in that jurisdiction, you can sort by date by clicking on date, where it'll give you May 28th all the way down to be able to find the most recent cases. These two columns, you're probably for the cases just in the last month are not going to see any results here. But if you were to clear these filters of just the dates, you'd be able to see, pretty please, sugar on top. All right, so I'm going to quickly say clear that and then apply. So now you should be able to see all documents, not just those that are most recent. And if you click on relevance, you'll be able to see some, it looks like not. So if there were more, I guess what these columns represent is how many cases cite to these cases. So because they're 2020, of course not, there aren't many other cases that say, like United States versus Dunlap decided just a month ago, right? If there were a court that would say, like United States versus Dunlap did just a month ago, there would be one case here, which would show how popular that case is. So at any rate, these two columns largely show in the entire database how many cases cite to United States versus Dunlap, and then in these particular results, for the results for medical condition plus supervised release plus coronavirus, how many cases for that query actually cite to that particular case. I'm going to broaden my search a bit so we can actually get some results here. So you can see this Kerr versus Kimmel, 12 cases had cited to Kerr versus Kimmel. So this gives you an idea in normal times of how influential a particular case is to other cases, and not just other cases in general, but cases that actually have COVID-19 or coronavirus in them. You can see that this Kerr versus Kimmel is very popular maybe for some other areas of law, but is not necessarily as popular for COVID-19 or coronavirus. Whereas this case, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic eviction, is relevant both to the entire database and to queries, cases that have the words COVID-19 or coronavirus in them. So if you look at these columns, that actually is a helpful thing to be able to maybe jump over or maybe read less intensely those that have the zero on them, and maybe focus more on those that are directly relevant to the things that you're looking for. Which actually brings to another item that you might not know as much about, but is a pretty powerful thing that Fastcase permits that others don't, and that's being actually able to tweak the search algorithm to whatever you think is most important. So here you can see that customize your relevance algorithm. Right now, I really want to know words that have in my search terms and have them close together, because I say that's super important. That's a 9. If they've been cited a bunch of times, that matters less to me, especially for COVID-19. That is such a new 2020 concept. So therefore, maybe for this particular query, I might want to push the amount of times that 2020 cases has been cited by others. Maybe that's less important to me, so I'm going to push that down. Whether it's a district court case or a Supreme Court case matters less to me. Really what I care about is for my particular jurisdiction, which I've already filtered. So maybe I push that down. But I do really care about more recent documents because this area of law changes by the day. So I'm going to push that up. So this being able to tweak the Fastcase algorithm to be able to say what is most important for me for this particular research session is something that is really rare. And I don't know of many other or any other legal research platforms that allow you to do that. So now if I rerun my search with this, with these items, now it favors the things that I just tweaked in my algorithm. So it gives me the most relevant to the top, those things that I've just tweaked on that side. Most relevant and most recent and the other areas that we talked about.
Damien, can I interrupt you for just a moment? I'm going to put you on the spot here to test your research mastery. I have a question from an audience member who wants to know, how would you, specifically, Damien, search for cases dealing with employer liability for exposure to coronavirus in the workplace?
Good. So there's people who know terms and connectors. If I want to find employer or employee, I could do that, right? But really, those both have the same stem of employ, that would include employer, employee, employment. So in that, I just create a stem. So employer and what were the other? What was the area that they were looking for?
So you're looking for the subject of employer liability for exposure to coronavirus in the workplace.
Got it. So exposed, that would be exposure or exposed or exposing, right? And then you can say maybe within 5 of workplace. Actually, I'll just do like that. That's probably the query that I would run. So that idea is that it has COVID-19 or COVID. I'll probably broaden it a bit. So I'll say COVID just in case they didn't include the 19 with it, or coronavirus, and employer or employee, and exposure within 5 of workplace or worker exposure or worked exposed. So all of those things would be covered by this query. I'm going to get rid of my cases and statutes limitation. So I'm just searching everything. So now you can see that in everything, there are 43 results, including 13 cases, 2 statutes, and 5 regulations. And that's actually a decent segue. We've talked about cases and being able to set alerts for cases. For example, I'd be able to then say, now that I've got my really well-crafted query on this side, I can add that to my alerts. So now tomorrow morning, I'm going to receive an email with the most recent cases that talk about work exposure with coronavirus. Next, I want to go to statutes. So there are 2 statutes that relate to coronavirus, and you can see how I changed my scope that way. You can either click on, so I had both cases and statutes selected. To be able to say, I just want statutes and not cases, I could do it one of 2 ways. I can either click on this X or this checkbox, which would then get rid of cases, or I could also do this, this collected current sources up here. I can click on this cases trash can and get rid of that. If I've selected a lot of particular facets and I don't want to then click 10 times up here, we actually, in our new version that will be coming up soon, you'll be able to clear all of them without having to go get rid of this and get rid of this and get rid of this. Fastcase is always being improved. That's one of the ways that we're being improved, and that should be actually out in the next week or so. So if I want to say, okay, what are the 2 statutes that relate to employee exposure in the workplace? There you're able to see that here. And one of these, of course, is right here in River City. I'm speaking to you from Minneapolis, where I could have said at the top that we're having some hard times in the Twin Cities. So to the extent you want to send some good thoughts and vibes our way, we'd be grateful. But if I want to see what Minnesota says about COVID-19 and employer and employee workplace, that's of course right here. And if I want to jump to COVID-19, it talks about rebuttable presumptions related to COVID-19 in the statutes.
So, Damien, while you're on the spot, I have another question from a user relating. It's a common question we often get from our bar users, which is, Damien, my screen looks different from yours. Why does my version of Fastcase not match yours? And if it doesn't, how do I get there?
That is a great question, and I love that question so much. So I'm going to open up for a particular for a particular bar that does not is not defaulting to Fastcase 7, you may see something that is Fastcase 6. So I'm going to go to, I think Florida may be a Fastcase 6 bar. So you might be, the questioner might be saying, okay, my screen looks like this. It doesn't look anything like this. How can I get this instead of this? And the reason I love that question is because we've been working on this screen since I joined in July to make it as user-friendly as possible. And we will soon be moving everyone over from this screen over to the other screen. So if you see this screen and you want to see this screen, what you do is on the top right-hand corner, you can see this little toggle. And it's and if you hover over it, you can see that little thing that says go to new Fastcase 7. Frankly, it's not that new anymore. It may be new to you, but if you click on this right here, that will take you to the beautiful, simple, easy to use Fastcase 7 that we've been working on so hard. When you get here, you can just do a query and be able to jump directly to the things that you care about. So if I want to do COVID-19, for example, but if you want to, from this screen, limit it, so this would search everything if you hit search. If you want to limit it on the front end to be able to say, here, I just care about California cases. You can click on the jurisdictions and sources, and then you can see all of the states and territories here, whether it's federal side, secondary resources, or states. If I say I care about California, I can click on California, and it automatically filters to just the sources that relate to California. That is the cases that relate to California, states that relate to California, statutes rather, that relate to California, books, for example, Literature on California is an employment manual that relates to California, all sorts of secondary cases, secondary sources, rules, constitutions, regulations, all of these things relate just to California. And I can also do that for here. So if I say, I just care, say I'm a bankruptcy lawyer, I just care about bankruptcy things. I can type bank R, and then it filters on the right-hand side just the things that relate to bankruptcy all over. So if I am interested in a secondary source, a book called Bankruptcy in Practice, or Best of the ABA, the Year in Consumer Bankruptcy, it'll filter based on that text that I typed in here, bankruptcy, and then it'll be able to, not bankruptcy. And then I am from here able to say, okay, I just care about all federal bankruptcy cases, or maybe just Second Circuit bankruptcy cases. And then be able to, now you can see that collects that in my current sources, and then I'm done. So now I can run COVID-19 for bankruptcy cases and be able to get my results for bankruptcy cases that say COVID-19. So that's all to say, a really good question. To be able to jump to what you've seen, all you have to do is click on the right-hand side. If you decide that you want to go back to Fastcase 6, I hope you don't, but if you do decide to, you can just click on this little person up here, which say back to Fastcase 6, and that will take you back to this old. So again, you can just jump from old to new this way, and then back again this way. Do we have other questions, Ken?
Yes, so our next question is also about the layout of the Fastcase 7 page, and the user is asking, can you also show them what else is available on that gear menu?
Yes, so the gear menu here is if you want to do advanced searches, this is a relatively complex query that I know because I've been researching since 2000, I guess 1990 something. But if you want more advanced search options, you can be able to have what's called the guided search. So you could say, I want all of these words, which will connect things with and, or you could say any of those words, which will connect them with or. Exactly this phrase, which is essentially a quotation marks, none of these words, which will be a not, and then the particular, this word within that many words of that other word. So if, for example, I can do expose within 5 words of work, which would essentially provide the same results as this. So at any rate, that's this is a way that if you're less familiar with these Boolean operators, as they're called, the or, and, not within 5, or maybe the asterisk to be able to stem. If you're less familiar with that, this gives you an easier way to be able to craft a query. And here's a cheat sheet underneath to be able to see what you can use to be able to make the query even better. So if I want to be able to add the word, we'll say breach, if I want to talk about breaches of contract, I can do that here. and I can add that to my search. You can see that that added and breach within 5 of contract, which sadly, that is a bug. It didn't include my stems there. So now I can search with this, and it looks like there is one regulation that talks about breaches of contract in relation to COVID-19 and employment and exposure to the workplace. I'm amazed that I even picked that up. That is into the regulations. So thus far in the presentation, we've just talked about cases, statutes, but you can see that there's all sorts of things that are also really important. And one of the most important things that we haven't yet talked about for this fast-breaking area is the blogs. We at Fastcase have partnered with LexBlog, which is I guess a syndication of law firms and lawyers who write blog articles and blog posts on fast-moving topics. So, you could go to a law review article, but that might be weeks or months old, or years old even, whereas the blog content would be fast-breaking and brand new. So if you click on, I'm going to get rid of my statutes and regulations and just focus on blogs and the 654 results here. This has run my query, COVID-19, on COVID or coronavirus. I'm going to rerun that because I didn't want to search for COVID or. So now there are 752 of these. So I can jump through the most recent articles by lawyers that know what they're talking about that talk about the fast spreading and fast moving areas of COVID-19 law. So you could run a Google query, but who knows what kind of results you would get for COVID-19 or COVID and the law. The beauty of this blog is it provides a well-curated set of just lawyers. You don't care what John Smith, the non-lawyer down the street, cares about. You care about what lawyers who are practicing in this area are thinking about and what their insights from, whether it's personal insights or keeping up with the law generally. So here's the blog section, especially for this fast-moving topic, is particularly important and good. Ken, how are we doing on questions? Do we have others?
We do. So I have a question from a couple of people who want to know about one of my favorite topics, which is editorialization or editorial enhancements like case summaries and headnotes. So the question is basically asking, does Fastcase currently have those things? Or if it does not, will it have it in the near future?
That's a really good question. So yes, there's I always think of Fastcase in what we currently have, and then the second bucket is what we will have. So I'm glad that the questioner asked both of those things. So what we currently have is for some select cases, we do have case summaries provided by a third party. I think Justia is the third party that provides some case summaries for some of the cases. That is current state. Future state that we in our white lab coats here at Fastcase are building. Future state, we will be able to provide much of a similar head note that you might get in the large legal research areas. But one of the strengths of Fastcase is that we don't do it as much with humans, but we create an algorithmic approach to be able to provide similar value at a far less cost, or maybe even free if you're in the bar association, through the bar association. So we are building an algorithmic method to be able to provide those case summaries at the top, as well as some other things that they certainly have blown my mind as we've been building them, and I hope they blow yours too. But I can't talk about them yet. Other questions, Ken?
That is it for now. So cool. Please continue.
All right. So let's talk about, so we've talked about sorting by date. We've talked about filtering by date. We've talked about blogs. This is a particularly interesting legal question that I found while I was looking at the blogs. So something that's, I guess, important to note that what I just did is in my PowerPoint, I embedded a URL that I clicked on. The beauty of one of the cool things about Fastcase is that if I copy this right here, and I copy it and then I email it to somebody else who has Fastcase as a subscription, they'll be able to go directly to the thing I was just looking at. They first might log in, but then they would jump right to, can you sue someone if they've infected with coronavirus? So I went directly from here to be able to open up this document right there. That's really good if you are working within a team that all of whom have access to Fastcase. You might say, well, what if my partner or what if my client does not have access to Fastcase? then the results would be you can still send it to them, unlike others where if I say, okay, if I want to find cases, and this particular case out of Michigan is particularly relevant, I'm able to say share this document. I want to share this document with someone else. And you can see here, copy public link to the document. The beauty of that is that I can now copy this public link and I can send this link to anybody, and they don't necessarily have to have access to Fastcase to be able to see the link to this document. So I'm opening up Firefox, which I'm not logged in to Fastcase. So it's as though Firefox thinks that I'm not a Fastcase subscriber. So if I go to this public link that I just copied from here, so I copied this, I pasted that public link into my URL bar, and again, Firefox thinks I don't subscribe to Fastcase. It takes me to this public page that anybody on the internet is able to see this case out of Michigan that I want to share with them. If you're a subscriber, you can log in, or you can sign up if you're not, but you can read the full text exactly as God intended without having to log in or pay any paywall. So this is this public link option is really helpful, not only for sharing with partners or clients the actual text of the document, but it's also helpful to be able to include in briefs. So if I want to create an annotated brief with hyperlinks that my judge that is looking at my my brief in PDF form, which is, they say between 80 and 90% of judges now read their cases on screen rather than on paper. So if I, as a judge, am reading it on screen, I could click on an annotated brief that includes the public URL and be able to read that particular case that I've cited in my brief. So this public link is really powerful for sharing, number one, with clients and partners, and number two, with judges and decision makers that are deciding my case. Something I haven't yet mentioned is for any particular document that is particularly helpful for my session, you can see this little star, which is essentially saving this document. And you can see the star now is highlighted here. So I can go through and star particular cases that I think are relevant. And then that will then, I will be able to go to my particular saved cases to be able to find all the cases that I've now saved. So now here are all my saved documents, which now include the things that I've just starred. If I'm the printing kind that decide that, okay, now I want to print these documents to be able to read either in PDF or to be able to print to Word documents to be able to copy and paste them later on if I'm on an airplane or something. I can also add things to print queue by doing this. So I can, I guess, download queue. I can add that and that and that and that. And then after I've added these things that are now highlighted to my download queue, I can download them here. And here's my download queue. If I click on this download here, I have the option to be able to either download them as Word or PDF. Generally, as a practicing lawyer, I always preferred Word because then you're able to more easily copy and paste without having to deal with line breaks. So if I have now downloaded, those documents are downloading, and now I'm able to quickly find the things that I've put into my queue and be able to copy and paste them into my brief or pleading or whatever else I would like. It is now complete, and it's now asking me where I want to save it. I'm going to call it delete me, and we'll say delete me too. So now it saves that as a document. That is opening up now, and you can see here now that I'm able to have all of the documents that I've added to my queue in one fell swoop in a Word document. I'm sorry, all of the Fastcase documents in a single Word file. And of course, you always want to trust Fastcase and enable editing. All right. In addition to the resources we've just discussed, there is a wealth of secondary resources as well that you might be interested in. So let's go back to our broad search, not just medical condition, but COVID-19 or coronavirus. You can see that there are 118 books and secondary resources that relate to COVID-19. If I want to browse through those, you can see that Wolters Kluwer has a wealth of information. So if I want to be able to find things, you can look at the law library, for example, for Wolters Kluwer. If you're particular subscription has Wolters Kluwer content that has really good up-to-the-date, as you can see, many recent cases that relate to employment law that is curated by Wolters Kluwer, a partner of Fastcase. Littler, of course, ABA, to the extent that any of the secondary sources have it. This is a good way to be able to find that. Law journals, obviously, both on the federal side, that's Hein Online, Full Court Press, which is the Fastcase Full Court Press imprint. State, so California, our California Lawyers Association has a lot of information, including some in COVID, it appears. And then, as I said, blogs and executive orders, of course, there are others. So people often forget about the secondary resources that are that have content. They often just go straight for the cases. But the beauty of I want to search all of everything. So right now we're in all sources. Is that you can see really quickly every single thing that might be helpful to your research, and then be able to filter it that way, including blogs and secondary content. All right, we have gone through the entirety of what I wanted to go to. Ken, do we have other questions from attendees?
So we have a question about public links. So can all content categories be shared via public links, or are there restrictions?
That is a fine question. Let's experiment with that right now, shall we? So this is a particular case, or not a particular case, a particular Wolters Kluwer document. We can see, copy the link to the public document. I'm going to Firefox, which again is not logged in. I'm pasting my this, and it looks like the answer to that is no. We, of course, we have partnerships with Wolters Kluwer and Littler and others that relate to it. So we at Fastcase happily share things that are what we think should be democratized, that is cases, statutes, rules, acts, the stuff that we as taxpayers pay for, that we think should be free to be able to access. Those are the things that we largely put into public links, because we don't think that anybody should have to pay twice for the bare text. What they should pay for, and what we happily charge them for, is for value added to those texts. So for the cases alone and the statutes alone, they can see that for free. But for secondary content, like the Wolters Kluwer documents, like the Littler content, of course, those organizations, our partners, spend a lot of money and time developing those copyrighted items. Therefore, we don't want to share them with the public for free. And of course, that would, if I spent a lot of time and money developing a thing and somebody else, my partner, gave it away for free, I would be less than pleased. So we want to honor the copyright and the work put into those secondary resources. Other questions?
So this is one of my favorite questions, because it's a question people often ask. Will I ever be able to print just my results list in Fastcase 7?
Oh, interesting. So if I wanted to take this, I could do Control P. So you're asking if essentially the right-hand pane would be able to be printable? Is that right?
That is correct.
So
or downloadable, I should say more accurately.
Right. That's a fine question, and I'd be interested in knowing why the user would want to do that. There's probably good use cases for it. I just can't think of any. But I can imagine that maybe I'll want to be able to say, okay, here are the cases I looked at today, and so I don't want to look at these cases tomorrow. That might be one use case for it. To solve for that particular use case, we actually have something in the works that will make that easier to be able to see items that you've read in the past, and then be able to filter, say, okay, show me just the cases that I have not read. So at any rate, so if the user wants to print this page to be able to remember later what they've seen or not seen, that feature might actually help them in the future. And that's, like I said, coming down the pike. But there might also be other reasons that I'm not thinking of. And if there are, I'd love to hear them, because if they're compelling, I would love to include that feature. As you can imagine, developers, Kevin and I, Kevin works with me on the Fastcase platform. We have literally hundreds of ideas like the thing you just mentioned. To be able to print natively is something that we have in queue, and we have that and hundreds of others that are waiting for our developers to be able to run at. So a large part of my job is to be able to prioritize thinking about, okay, what will our users think is most useful and most helpful and solve a lot of their problems. And so maybe printing search results is one of those things that goes toward the top of the list. But I would love to be able to hear more about why that user might be wanting to do that.
All right, Mr. Damien, that is it for our list of questions. We're right at 50 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and close this out. Do you have any final comments about anything you would like to share today?
Sure. So yeah, I guess in closing, I'm grateful that you spent 50 minutes with us. And I would say that as you think about your clients' needs and as you think about where the law is going with COVID-19, I would say that, remember that Fastcase has a wealth of resources that relate to COVID-19. In addition to that, of course, there's also DrAlarm, which has also, even a broader set of what is going on, boots on the ground. So there are, COVID-19 documents that I think are available to even non-subscribers of DrAlarm via the Fastcase page, the Fastcase COVID-19 page. So fastcase.com/COVID-19. For God's sake, fastcase.com/COVID-19. So from this page, one doesn't even need to be a DrAlarm subscriber to be able to see these DrAlarm results. So at any rate, remember that Fastcase has a ton of information, DrAlarm has a ton of information, and each of them will give you probably what you're looking for as you represent your clients.
Wonderful. All right, well, I want to thank everyone as well for sticking with us for this session and all of our weekly sessions. As always, I hope you have learned a lot. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to send them out, support@fastcase.com. Once more, a reminder, if you are seeking up to 4 hours of free CLE credit, check out our weekly CLE webinars, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have great ones, including one led by one of my favorite people in the entire world, our head librarian, Aaron Page, on Boolean operators and legal ethics. So make sure you check those out. They are all offered to you free of charge. We even handle the reporting. So we do all the work for you. Otherwise, I hope to see everyone this upcoming Wednesday at 2 p.m. for our next Work From Home Wednesday webinar, where we're going to talk about legal publishing. All right, until next time, enjoy your weekend, everyone. And thank you again, Damien, for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.